Hello. So oopsie, no intro today because what happened was I recorded 30 minutes. I recorded this video for 30 minutes. Spent 30 minutes, and then I realized that my mic was off. So although the video was recorded, um, it did none of it was recorded. So I'm doing it again. And so then basically, here's the deal: Generation 8 has been out for about a year now, and basically, even though it's been out for a year, we only recently had the DLC, which had a bunch of the old Pokemon back in. And also had some new Pokemon added as well, like the new Regis, the Galarian forms of older Pokemon, etc., etc. A couple more legendaries. So I thought it'd be really interesting to go through and rank the Pokemon and talk about how good they were. Yeah, basically I was just, kind of debating on how I wanted to do this, but um, I decided in the end to rank them based on the current format, VGC 2021. So this is especially relevant for Pokemon like Cinderace, where it was really good at one of the previous VGC formats, but not super good in the current one. So yeah. Also, these are ranked against each other rather than like how I would rank them in like a general VGC tier list. So there's like a little bit of inflation overall, I would say. But yeah, starting off with the F tier. Up here we have Octolocto, Stunfisk, and Galarian Rapidash. These are Pokemon where like even if you try really hard, these probably aren't going to be good Pokemon, unfortunately. Like, pretty much no matter what you do, like, they're always going to be, like, holding you back or, like, getting in the way. And you're normally better off just, like, not having them at all on your team. Which is disappointing. Like, with all three of these Pokemon, it's, like, it probably is surprising to see Octolocto so low. I can do it a little bit. That was maybe a mistake. Yeah, it might be a bit of a surprise to see Octolocto so low in particular, but, like, yeah, these are Pokemon that just, like, not only do other Pokemon do what they do better, they don't really do anything even close to well. I feel like the one you can make the strongest argument for is Stunfisk, but even Stunfisk, like, isn't, like, I really don't know what it does, truthfully, so, yeah, I don't know. These are Pokemon where, like, overall just a disappointment. D tier are Pokemon where, like, they have a Gimmick, and, like, the Gimmick is, like, okay. However, the thing is that the Gimmick isn't good. So, for example, Greedent, right? Or I think it's Greedent. I can't remember. Yeah, Greedent. It has, like, cheek pouch belly drum, right? So, like, let's say this was your favorite Pokemon of all time and you really wanted to use it. Like, you could build a strategy around it, and it wouldn't be, like, the worst thing that I've ever seen. However, it's not going to be good, right? It's not something you would ever choose to do. And if you're using it, you're pretty much putting yourself at a disadvantage. Yeah. Today's Sunday. I thought it was Tuesday. Orbeetle. Orbeetle is another Pokemon where, like, it has some stuff going for it. They gave it a G-Max form, which is Gravity, which is actually pretty hard to get up in Generation 8. But its stats really aren't that... actually, the stats aren't that bad, but it doesn't have much offense, and the real issue is that its move pool is pretty lacking, and Psychic and Bug are really not the best offensive types, especially considering, like, Steel types are popular, Flying types are popular, even Dark types are relatively popular, so... yeah, like, its offensive stats really aren't there, so it needs to be used as a support Pokemon, but it doesn't really have enough going for it, right? And although, like, you could build a team around it, it's not going to be very good at the end of the day, so I don't recommend using this thing. Full Apple's another one where, like, they gave it the hustle ability, so, like, in theory it could do some stuff, like, but the main issue is it's too slow. Like, Hustle plus Dynamax is good, but, like, it's way too slow to really make use of it. Like, it's like it hits 134 stat, which is, like, I think about as fast as Bisharp, which is, I think, base 70 or something, which is, it's just overall, like, disgustingly slow, especially given that it looks like it should be relatively fast. And it can't really be used outside of Dynamax, and its typing is so bad defensively, and it's frail. So, like, basically, even in Dynamax, you're not fast enough, you're still getting, like, taking huge damage from things, and you're not fast enough to really be making use of your max moves, and also the max moves are, like, not the best offensive type, because, again, Steel is really good into both of them, so... yeah, overall, it's a real disappointment. This, Pumpkaboo, no, what's this thing called? Sinisty? Wait, is that the big formy or the little formy? What's the big formy called? Teacup? Wait, what's the big form? Poltegeist. Poltegeist, it has some gimmicks, right? It has Curse Body, it has weak armor, so you could do, like, Beat Up, Weakness Policy, Baton Pass. It gets Shell Smash, so you could do Shell Smash, Baton Pass. But overall, it's not very good. Like, its defensive stats are really not there, and even though it's a setup sweeper, like, it doesn't have the coverage nor the offensive stats to really make use of its like, once setting up. And if you're, like, there's really no reason to set this thing up, even over, like, Blastoise, for example, and, yeah, like, even Blastoise isn't that good. Thievul at least has Unburden and a couple of, like, interesting support moves, so it's not, like, the worst Pokemon, but its stats are atrocious. Like, truly, truly some of the worst stats. Okay, not like some of the worst stats, but like nothing really redeeming about his stats there. And it can't really do anything aside from like be a supportive mon. And also it really, in order to justify using the thing, you'd really have to set a terrain with it. And like, yeah, I don't really think that like it pairs that well with any of the terrain setters. I don't know. It's okay. Like, it's fine. It's just not good. Mr. Rhyme, overall disappointing, like, just mediocre across the board. Screen Cleaner, like, despite screens being popular, like, it still didn't justify using Mr. Rhyme. Stonejourner I was a little hard on, like, it's probably more of a C tier mon, but after, like, I tested this thing extensively, and it was just, like, so bad that, like, yeah, it gets D tier because I'm disappointed in it, because it had potential, and it was just so bad that I couldn't justify putting it any higher. Same thing with Copperajah, like, both these Pokemon are, like, should be in a higher tier, but these are both Pokemon I tested a lot, and, like, could not make work for the life of me, so I don't like them for that reason. C tier. Intellion, kind of shown at the beginning of the format, but really fell off pretty hard. Especially, like, out of the 3 starters, Intellion suffered the most from the addition of Hidden Ability, at least relative to the other 2, because it doesn't really do anything with its Hidden Ability. Getting a critical hit isn't consistent without a setup, and the setup isn't really worth, like, isn't worth it on a frail Pokemon like Intellion, given you have to give up your item and you have to use Focus Energy, so it's just not consistent at all. And also, like, there's better water types. Like, even once Primarina was, like, popular, like, Primarina kind of already started to outshine this thing, and, like, although it was okay in the beginning and, like, basically early format, it was okay, but once we got actual good Pokemon, it really fell off hard. Eldegoss, I think, is, like, a cool Pokemon. It has the unique ability Cotton Down, which, like, can be used in a bunch of different scenarios, and, like, you can pair it with Clear Body, you can pair it with what else? Contrary, like, there's a couple Pokemon that pair well with it, and it also gets Sleep Powder and Helping Hand and Pollen Puff, so it has some good support moves, but overall, it has All My Friends Are Dead syndrome. You can ignore it. Sleep Powder is inconsistent as its best form of, like, offense. Also, now we have terrain that's, like, pretty easy to set up, so overall pretty disappointing. But good stats, at least. Double. I put Double in C tier because it's a Pokemon that, like, although it doesn't do that much, it has the access to Cotton Guard plus Body Press and Fluffy. So you could, like, if you really wanted to use this thing, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Because you could just basically play around it in a style where you try and KO all the special attackers, set up your double, and win the game. Like, even Iron Defense, Body Press, Rest, Sleep Talk is okay if you can take out the special attackers. Not a great strategy, but it's, like, it's usable at least. So yeah, it gets into the C tier for that reason. Dreadnought. Dreadnought's a Pokemon that actually hits really hard if you give it a Life Orb and you Dynamax it. And in the rain, it has Swift Swim as well. So I actually think it would be, like, basically the physical Swift Swim user that we've all been waiting for, like, forever. However, because of the Gmax form and the fact that its secondary typing is Rock, if the Gmax form overwrote the Rock type attack and made Rock type Solve the Rock, which makes sense to me, then I think it would probably be a tier or 2 up, and it would actually have been a really big threat. But because the Rock type attack sits with the Sandstorm, and the Water type attack doesn't set up the Rain, it's actually pretty, like, garbage. So you're better off using, like, Dynamax rather than Gigantamax, and that's just, like, yeah, it needed to be able to use its secondary stab without overriding the weather, and that's what really hurt it. So it stays in C tier. Boltund has potential. It's like one of the only Electrify users in the game, and Electrify is really good into a Dynamax format. It has competitive, it has strong jaw, but it's overall just pretty mediocre. But yeah, I put it in a C tier. You could probably argue for D tier. Appleton, kind of same logic as Double. These are kind of like budget Ferrothorn Pokemon, especially Appleton, because, like, it gets Iron Defense, Leech Seed, Body Press, Recover, which is something that Ferrothorn doesn't have. And although it has this 4 times weakness to Ice, and it has a lot of weaknesses, it's pretty bulky and is thick fat, so you're not, like, that concerned about Ice type moves, because yeah, it's only 2 times effective, so at least it's not like an Oko. So yeah, it's a Pokemon that, like, you'll probably lose on timer or you'll get crit and lose, but you could use it if you wanted. Cramorant, it's like the ability's really good, but it's not, like, the Pokemon's just not, unfortunately. Yeah, Water Flying isn't even bad typing, but the stat, like, this thing is just hurt so badly by its stats. Barraskewda, sorry. Like, it has a cool ability, it has Swift Swim, it has a high base speed, but the addition of Pokemon like Dragapult and Regieleki just make Barraskewda kind of irrelevant. If it was actually the fastest Pokemon in the format, you'd see some play, I think, but yeah, it's not the worst Pokemon. It hits pretty hard, but it doesn't hit hard enough to justify its atrocious bulk, and that's, I think, the thing that really seals the deal. Obstagoon actually has pretty good stats, but its typing isn't great, and it's honestly just at a really awkward speed tier, so although it has, like, some things going for it, and a pretty good ability, decent stats, actually pretty good stats, and like, the typing isn't horrible. Normal types are pretty, like, good by nature. It's honestly just the speed stat being too slow that, like, it's, like, too slow to really be a sweeper, but it's too frail to, like, be, like, a tanky attacker, so I don't know. And I just don't think it has the coverage either, although it has a couple good abilities. So, actually, the coverage isn't bad, so I don't really know why Obstagoon didn't do better, but I think it was just, maybe it's just a meta thing. I think it's probably just the dark typing, and the fact that it was weak to Togekiss for the whole meta, and now we have, like, actual Pokemon. Also, being 4 times weak to a type is never great, and the fighting type is somewhat popular in this format, so, yeah. Berserker, I put it in here just because I don't really know what to do with it. I've never tested it. It's a weird Pokemon. It doesn't really do anything, but Steely Spirit is, in theory, a cool ability, so for that reason, I bumped it. A little bit. Yeah, I bumped it up a little bit, because, yeah, in theory, you could do some stuff with it. It has Fake Out, like, it has some interesting support moves, but, yeah, overall, not a great Pokemon. It doesn't even feel like a real Pokemon to me, because, like, I've never used it, I've never really seen it, like, it's just not great. Surf-Edged hits really hard, and it can always crit as well if it holds the stick, but, it's, like, not, it's too slow to be to attack outside of Trick Room, and it's not slow enough to really be a real Trick Room sweeper, so, although it can be threatening to play against, I put it in the C tier. Mr. Mime is slightly better than Mr. Rhyme because it's faster and has better bulk and has some good support moves, but overall isn't great. Fake Out Icy Wind is good, though. At least it was good earlier in the format. It's not super great now. Phalanx. Phalanx has the No Retreat gimmick, which is, like, not a bad gimmick at all, but, it's not great either. The move is phenomenal, but Phalanx just can't really make use of it well enough because its stats are too bad. And, like, I understand why its stats aren't better, but still. Yeah, it's fine. Like, you can do okay with Phalanx, but overall, it's not gonna be very good. It's probably you're gonna have to do more work for it than it's gonna have to do for you, which is kind of the whole theme of the C tier. Like, it's not that these Pokemon are terrible. It's just not that they're great either. They're kind of like lower mid tier. But yeah, Pincurchin. Pincurchin's an interesting Pokemon. It has Electric Terrain. I've actually seen this thing do work occasionally, so it's not like it's the worst Pokemon, but it truly has awful stats. And its move pool is pretty bad as well, and I'm never even sure if it's supposed to be physical or special, so yeah, it's a C-tier mon. It's not horrible, and like it was the only Electric Terrain setter until Tapu Koko came along, but yeah, it's not good either. Frosmoth, it has potential. Like, the Ice Scale's ability is kind of cool. This is kind of like a reverse Ferrothorn, where with Quiver Dance and for Ice Scales, it could be good. It's too slow, though, so even after a Quiver Dance, it doesn't outspeed stuff, and I'm not even sure if it outspeeds Alecki after 2 Quiver Dances. It probably does. It'd be pretty slow to not. Probably not to mid Alecki, though, actually. So yeah, like, Ice Bug isn't great typing. It's 4 times weak to Rock and Fire, which is pretty atrocious, but I think this thing isn't terrible, but it's also not great. You wouldn't really ever choose to, I don't know, like it's not very good in my opinion. Ice-Q, well, we have a lot of ice types here. Ice-Q is a good Pokemon, but it's, again, inconsistent. It kind of requires your opponent to, number one, like, break the Ice Face for you, and it's pretty, like, the counterplay to it is pretty big, even though I do like Ice-Q. And then both Dracos, like, they're, like, fine. Like, they're not good Pokemon, but they do have, like, the strong Fishious Rend and Bolt Beak moves, so I put them in the C tier because, like, you can't underestimate them. Like, they're definitely a step up from the other Mons. B tier. Cinderace goes in the B tier because it's not very good in the current format. The issue with Cinderace is that it doesn't its bulk is bad, right? It has fast speed and pretty decent offense, and its ability really is what, like, was making it good in the format for a while. It allowed it to change its type before attacking, and therefore you could use it offensively, obviously, because it was stronger, because it was changing its type, but also defensively, right? If you're attacking first into, like, an Excadrill, if the Excadrill goes for Max Quake and you Max Airstream, that's an immunity. But if they go for Max Steel Spike and you Max Steel Spike first, or Max Flare, then that's a resistance, right? So it allowed it to take its kind of, like, mediocre bulk and allow it to be like, bulkier, more positional, like, and basically just have more survivability. But in order to do that, it really had to be attacking first. And although, like, there was Dragapult before, Cinderace had Sucker Punch and Max Darkness as well, so even then that was, like, a little awkward for the Dragapult player. But now, the issue is that there's too many fast Pokemon, and its stats were only barely getting by, in my opinion, and once, like, the general level of stats increased as more Pokemon were added, it just really can't keep up anymore. I think the nail in the coffin for Cinderace is Regieleki, because you can Electro Web, lower its speed, and then hit it with a super effective move before it can change types, and that's just too brutal for it. Corviknight I put in the B tier because, similar to Double and, like, Appleton and these other bulky Pokemon, it has the same, like, kind of general theme. It's typically like a bulky steel type with good defensive typing and good defensive stats that sets up on you and then tries to solo in the end. It's not higher because that strategy is inconsistent and, like, you'll lose to crits into timer, but it is a threatening Pokemon, and it can Dynamax, which is, like, not necessarily something you want to do with Double or Appleton, but it can Dynamax and go for Max Airstream, Max Steel Spike, stuff like that, Max Knuckle with Body Press. So it's not a bad Pokemon by any means. It's, like, still good, but yeah, it's too defensive, right? It doesn't exert enough offensive pressure, so it ends up with all my friends are dead sometimes. Sandaconda, I think, was really underrated this year. I feel like nobody really took the time to explore it fully, but I saw a couple teams that were interesting with it. I think it had potential. I think it absolutely had potential. I was, surprised to see it not do better this year, but that's partially because events were canceled. So, Sandaconda, it's got a cool ability, and really the Gmax form's trapping effect, I think, is really interesting and really should have been more looked into. So I think it's B tier. Toxtricity I put in the B tier. I wasn't really sure about Toxtricity, but like I know a lot of people liked it. And, like I know it was like popping up on some players' teams. I never liked it myself, but like Electric and Poison are pretty decent, are really good offensive types in the current format because Electric is only resisted by Electric, Ground, and Grass and Dragon. And Poison is Grass, which is like basically Electric's #1 counter right now is Grass types, and then Poison being able to hit those is pretty nice. Like Rillaboom, for example. Pretty bad defensive stats, but a good ability and a good spread Electric move, so it's like fine. Like I would probably put it in C tier myself, but I know people like were experimenting with it, and I didn't test it myself too much, so I'm gonna put it in B tier because I don't want to write it off. Sandiscorch. Same as Sandaconda, the Gmax effect on these mons were really good, so I was surprised I didn't see more play. I know Sajin used this one as well. I think it's #1 in the world. White Smoke is a pretty good... Like, both Sandiscorch and Sandaconda have good abilities as well as a good secondary Gmax effect, so I think that they could still, like, be okay. Cursula's B tier. It's not super consistent, but it hits incredibly hard if you get it set up. Either with, like, beat up Weakness Policy, Weak Armor to get to +6 speed and then Weakness Policy and max, or... just Life Orb Trick Room, and it's just like the damage output of this thing is insane. So, yeah, for that reason, it's in the B tier. It probably isn't phenomenal in the current meta because, Glastrier like probably just dumpsters it, and Torkoal's picking up. Although Torkoal actually doesn't do anything versus this thing, but yeah, it's too hard. Like it's too much setup. It's kind of like to get it going, but it's still a scary mon. Galarian Corsola I actually put in the B tier because this thing is like really hard to kill, and like I've lost this thing a couple times, which is like Toxic Stall. I don't think it's super consistent. But I think of the stall Pokemon, this is one of the best because it can Willows things, it can Strength Step things, and it's just like overall super annoying to deal with. And it has Cursed Body, so it can be like just disruptive in general. So, like if you wanted to build a stall team, I think Galarian Corsola is like one of the better ones. Galarian Darmanitan I put in the B tier. It's like it hits really hard, but the issue is that with Dynamax, like Galarian Darmanitan #1 doesn't really want a Dynamax, and #2 it kind of wants to be OHKOing things because otherwise it's probably going to get OHKO'd in return. And the issue with this is that with Dynamax being available to your opponent, they probably can survive a hit from Galarian Darmanitan and just knock it out in one shot. So, yeah, I don't like it very much for that reason, but it is a strong offensive Pokemon, and it's done well before, so I put it in the B tier because that's what feels fair to it. This is just Runerigus. Ground plus Ghost type. It's a good defensive Trick Room setter. Like, it's not phenomenal, but, like, it's a nice, like, if you want to set Trick Room and be immune to electric type attacks. And it has a cool ability that has some implications as well. So, like, I think this could be better if, like, you could overwrite the ability of Dynamax Pokemon. But that's a lot of Pokemon and moves, so to be fair, that makes sense. So, yeah, but I like this thing. I think it's pretty good. Alchemy, I think, would be a higher tier if it were faster. The issue is you can't Choice Scarf your Alchemy inside Decorate. And also there's been a lot of redirection in this format as well, so it's not been super consistent. But Decorate is a broken move, like, actually broken. If you get an off on a Pokemon, like on a sweeper, you can probably just win the game. So I think this is another one that was kind of underexplored. And GD Male, I actually think is B tier. It's decent offensive setter of Psychic Terrain with Expanding Force, Hyper Voice. It gets Imprison Trick Room, which I like. Like, Imprison Trick Room, Protect, Expanding Force is a pretty decent move pool. I think it's pretty good. Morpeko's not bad at all. It gets Fake Out, and Aura Wheel is like one of the most broken moves that they've ever created. The only reason Morpeko's decent is because of Aura Wheel, but Aura Wheel's really good. It's 2 types, it's 110 base power, it never misses, and it raises your speed. Like, just talk about it's just a stupid move. Like, yeah, it's actually insane. I feel like both the Slowbro and Slowking Pokemon were just pretty disappointing overall. Yeah, like, they're mediocre. Like, they're decent Trick Room setters, they can do some damage, they gave them some unique properties, but they're not good. I wouldn't recommend using them. Like, they're fine, right? Like, kind of like a lot of the B tier Pokemon, it's like, they're okay. They're better than C tier, but they're not as good as A tier. And that's what a tier list is. Anyway, Galarian Articuno and Galarian Zapdos, I feel like, really struggle because they're weak to electric. And they don't really have the bulk or, like, the nuance to keep up with the electric types. Whereas, like, Moltres has the special bulk, and, like, I don't know, like, Moltres just feels better into Lucky than these two do, especially Zapdos. Like, Articuno kind of, but yeah. Yeah, some of Psychic and Fighting don't feel like great types here either. Like, these should be stronger than they look, but, like, nobody's really been able to make them work so far. And Regidrago's just struggling because, like, it's not fast enough to really make use of Dragon Energy. It normally is going to require a Choice Item, and this is a format where Choice Items just aren't as good. Yeah, if it was faster, it'd be better. A tier now is, like, Pokemon that are good, right? They're not perfect. They're kind of debatable in terms of where they fall on the tier list, but they are good. Hatterini's been like really good the whole format. It's fallen a bit now that Rillaboom is popular. Like pretty much whatever Rillaboom picked up in popularity, and especially when we got the new DLC Pokemon, this thing fell off pretty hard because there's just better Trick Room setters, and like it's easy to overrate the terrain now with Rillaboom being more popular and Feeny being more popular. But yeah, basically this thing is still really threatening if you pair it with Indeedee. If the opponent doesn't have a terrain setter, it can be like just an instant loss. Because Max Psychic coming from Life Orb, Hatterini, and Trick Room is doing big damage, and Max Smite doesn't override the Psychic terrain and offers one of the most broken status conditions in the game, which is double confusion on both opponents without fail. So this thing is really threatening, really dangerous, fire coverage as well, and it's an offensive Trick Room setter, right? Which is, it's kind of like an updated Reuniclus, like a Fairy type Reuniclus, Fairy Psychic type Reuniclus, where it's like an offensive Trick Room setter that yeah, that actually like does damage. Whereas a Pokemon like Dusclops, it's Trick Room up, and then you have to get the Sweeper in. If you can get Trick Room up safely for Hatterini, you can just blow through teams. Grimmsnarl, some people might put in the S tier. I'm not so sure, so I'm putting it in the A tier. It's a really good utility Pokemon thanks to its move pool and Prankster. Oftentimes it's going to run dual screens, but you can also run like Fake Out, Fake Tears, Trick, or just dual attacks. They almost always run Spirit Break, but some of them run Sucker Punch as well. Like a plethora of good support options. It also has Thunder Wave, though that's not really popular right now. But yeah, most of the time it's running dual screens and then Spirit Break and then one more move depending on the team. Fake Tears, Sucker Punch, Fake Out, Taunt. Yeah, it's a really good support Pokemon, but it's like stats say that it should be an offensive Pokemon, and people mainly train it in like its defensive stats. So for that reason, like it's like a little bit awkward, but it's very, very good. Don't get me wrong. Like this is the only one in the A tier that I feel like maybe should be S tier, but like it also doesn't really do that much damage in the way that it's currently used. So I'm putting it in the A tier because I don't think it's like support necessarily justifies like what it, you know, like you could run Screens Regieleki and it'd be a similar role in my opinion. Obviously Grimmsnarl does certain things better, but yeah, that's just kind of my take. Galarian Weezing I think is a really good Pokemon. The ability to shut off abilities is really strong, and it's a very difficult Pokemon to use, but I think it has like enormous potential, and we're seeing it now with Galarian or Cantonian Weezing plus Regigigas picking up in popularity and doing really well in tournaments. Yeah, like Galarian Weezing is basically the same thing with a Fairy typing added. So I think this thing is really good. I've used it myself. I think it's overall very difficult to deal with, and certain teams just kind of fold under the pressure of it. And it's a really complex Pokemon as well. So I think it has more use outside of just Gigas Weezing. Indeedee Female is probably the third best redirector, and redirection is pretty good in the current format, so I think Indeedee's pretty good. Follow Me, Protect plus Bulk is nice. Helping Hand, Mystical Fire, Safeguards, Expanding Force, like, Follow Me, Protect, Expanding Force, and then one more is almost always going to be your move pool. Most of the time the fourth move is going to be Helping Hand. But yeah, this thing sticking around can be really annoying, and it also is good against Pokemon like Rillaboom and even Tapu Fini if you have the team for it, so it's a dangerous Pokemon for sure, and it's pretty good support. Both Dracozolt and Dracovish haven't had a ton of success in the current format, but I can't put them any lower because of how strong they are. They will be a lot better if Sand is ever in a good space in the metagame because they take such good advantage of Sand Rush with their hidden abilities, and especially Dracozolt, who like now is less likely to Dynamax, but also won't miss moves because of Hustle. So yeah, these both could have the potential to be really strong. And then Duraludon's kind of in an awkward spot. I didn't feel justified putting it in the B tier, but it's like it always like. It has some stuff going for it, right? Steel Dragon is really good offensive typing, and defensive typing for that matter as well. The issue with Duraludon are that its stats basically say it can't be... If it's like fast and offensive, then even if you max it, it's going to get 2-hit KO'd by a lot of things, and that's really not something you want in your Dynamax, and it's not that fast in the first place, and it doesn't offer any speed control with its max moves unless you run Hyper Beam, which you don't really want to do. Conversely, you can give up on speed and make it super bulky and give it the Assault Vest, but without Life Orb and without the... Even if you invest in special attack, it just doesn't do enough damage. Like it's like those triangles where it's like pick 2 out of 3, and Duraludon really feels like that to me as a Pokemon, and it just doesn't work. Like, yeah. So it's like, it has some things going for it. Being able to attack around redirection is good, but overall it's like kind of disappointing. The ability's cool though. And then our S tier. So Rillaboom, I feel like is maybe one of the best Pokemon in the format. It's extremely flexible in a way that not a lot of other Pokemon are, because it can run both super offensive sets and defensive, really bulky utility sets. It has incredible stats and a really good ability. So the ability offers healing for your whole team. It overrides opposing terrains, which is really valuable. It has damage of Earthquake, which is good, and it also powers up Grass-type moves and gives your Grassy Glide priority. So Rillaboom was like okay to mediocre before it got its hidden ability and before the DLC, but once those were added, it was ridiculous. Like, it was so unbelievably powerful that, yeah, it was like the #1 used Mon in some of the past metas, and it's still very good right now. So Grass typing is phenomenal because of Regieleki, Tapu Fini, some of these other Pokemon as well. Priority is really valuable in the current format, especially priority on a powerful move like Most priority attacks are 40 base power, and Grassy Glide is 70 base power plus stab plus Grassy Terrain's effect. So it's very powerful. It can use like a bunch of different sets. Like primarily, it's going to be either offensive with Choice Band or Miracle Seed, or defensive with Assault Vest. On an offensive set, you can run Grassy Glide. Like Choice Band, you can run Grassy Glide, Woodhammer, High Horsepower, Superpower, Knockoff, U-Turn. And on a defensive set, you can run Fake Out, U-Turn, Knockoff, Grassy Glide, and those are all really good support options as well. So, yeah, this is one of the best Pokemon in the format, in my opinion. One of the best Pokemon in Generation 8, actually, in my opinion. Colossal is another one that I think is really good. It's less flexible than Rillaboom. It's always going to run 3 of the same 4 moves, and then the 4th one is just coverage, depending on if you want ground or grass. But it's very dangerous, to say the least. It's just that its G-Max form is like so powerful, and the passive damage from G-Max Vocalith is insane. In addition to the fact that it's a good setup sweeper, because it can have Weakness Policy, Steam Engine. Those are all really, really good effects. So, yeah, this thing is really, really strong. I think it's won both Players Cup 1 and Players Cup 2. I think it's really good. Dragapult, I think, is also S tier. This thing was like the main threat for a lot of earlier VGC metas, and even now that it's fallen off, I think it can still be good. And also, it's won the Players Cup 2 as a support set, similar to Rillaboom, but less effective in terms of like it can be offensive or support. But yeah, we've seen Life Orb, we've seen Colbur Berry, we've seen Dual Light Clay, we've seen Life Orb. Did I say that Weakness Policy? Lumberry's been used a couple times, like Focus Sash. Like there's a whole like bunch of different sets that it can run, and a whole bunch of its move pool's insane as well. So yeah, it's really, really good. Urshifu Dark, most people, like, that's another one that has a contender to be the best Mon, like, introduced in Generation 8. I'll talk about both Urshifus at once, because they share similar traits. Either the critting or the attacking through Protect would have been enough to make this Mon, like, A tier, and the combination of both is insane. Like, the fact that you can't intimidate these Pokemon, and you can't Protect in front of them, sets up for really easy endgames, where you have absolute certainty of what's going to happen, and it's really difficult to have defensive counterplay, because you can't Protect to reposition. You can only switch things in, and because VGC is double battles, like, if you don't want to Protect in front of a Mon, that means that, like, you could, in theory, take an attack from both Pokemon. So it's really easy to, or both of your opponent's Pokemon. So it's really easy to set up for pins and for endgame situations like that. Additionally, they each have priority in Aqua Jet and Sucker Punch, which is really valuable, and it's stab priority as well. They each have close combat, which is good. They make really good use of Focus Dash. Urshifu Dark likes Choice Band as well. They're in a pretty good speed tier. Like, it's not the best, but like it's not the worst either. It outspeeds a lot of the metagame, and yeah, it's just very difficult to play against. And you can't set Intimidate or use Reflect to stop them most of the time, because their primary attacking move is a crit move. So yeah, they're actually broken. Moltres is somehow really good. It's mostly used with Weakness Policy, but obviously Life Orb did well as well recently. Berserk isn't even, I don't even know what makes Moltres so good. I think it's just the stats. Like, the stats and the typing are really good. Flying is really good. The bulk is really nice. Max Darkness powers itself up. Like, Berserk is a nice bonus, but you can't count on it. But yeah, this thing is like, every time I use it, I'm like, this thing is broken. Like, it's I don't know if it's just like favorable into the metagame or what, but like, it's really difficult to take down. And it's even more difficult with like the right support. Like, if you give it screens, if you give it Weakness Policy, it can be really, really dangerous. And it hits really hard if you give it a Life Orb as well. So I like this Pokemon a lot. I think it's really good. Aleki is another one where it's just like a clear S tier. This thing is kind of like, I don't want to say it's meta-defining, but it sets a lot of the term. Aleki on its own invalidates a lot of the Pokemon that we already talked about on this list, right? Like, it invalidates Scarf Dracovish because it just outspeeds and Electrowebs. It invalidates, what else? It invalidates, like, pretty much a lot of the B tier. Because nothing here really wants to be Electroweb or Volt Switch. Like, even Toxtricity, if it's Scarf or Sash, like, you can just Electroweb, slow it down, right? A lot of Pokemon on this list, like, it invalidates, like, the other birds. It invalidates Regidrago because of Electroweb. Like, Electroweb on a Pokemon this fast is so difficult to play around for a lot of Pokemon in the mid-speed tier. So, yeah, this thing is absolutely incredible. I can run a bunch of different sets as well, which is funny because it basically only has electric moves in its move pool. But you can run dual screens, you can run Focus Sash, Life Orb, Choice Specs, Magnet. Yeah, like, it has a bunch of different sets that it can do, and it does a lot of them well. So yeah, I think this thing is pretty strong, to say the least. Glastrier is one of the best Trick Room sweepers in the game. It has, like, although Ice isn't the best typing, it has a really good move pool and just phenomenal stats. Its only bad stat is its speed stat, which is what you want to be bad in the first place to use in Trick Room. And its ability powering up attacks when it takes a KO is also really terrifying. So, yeah, like, overall this thing is just really, really strong. By far one of the best Pokemon introduced in the Crown Tundra DLC. Pretty much one of the best Pokemon introduced in Generation 8 as well, even before it fuses with Calyrex. Yeah, just like good move pool, good offenses, good ability, really dangerous. And Spectre, I'm actually putting the S tier as well. This one I wasn't sure if it should be S or A, but I think it's S tier. Its stats are so good. Like, if Aleki didn't exist, and like like, if this thing were the fastest thing in format, it'd probably be the best mon in format. And it's only kind of kept in check because we have a Pokemon like Lucky to, like, keep it around. But this thing, like, you can't get out of position versus this thing or you'll instantly lose. And, like, I think it just speaks to how strong the Pokemon is that, like, basically it runs Mudshot as its coverage. Mudshot and Hyper Beam are its coverage moves, and, like, that's still enough to make it good. I think it really, like, if you change the type, it probably wouldn't be as good, but it's because Ghost is only resisted by Dark and immune to, like, by Normal, so it can hit every, like, not everything, but it hits so much of the metagame for neutral, because, like, there are Dark and Normal types, but, like, yeah, like, they're not the majority of the typings, obviously, so the fact that this is pretty much able to hit everything for neutral and has such a high special attack stat and has access to Nasty Plot, and if it gets a KO, it gets even stronger, and you compare it with Helping Hand, like, it just absolutely rolls through people, so yeah, that's a very, very good Pokemon, and yeah, that's why I have it in the S tier. So that's my list. We can take a look through one more time. I think I did a pretty good job with this. I think this is pretty fair. Obviously, these are all not VGC legal, so I didn't talk about them, and then these are pre-evolved and also not really relevant, like, so I didn't talk about them. But yeah, that's my list. Hopefully this time it works in the recording. But yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if there's anything you disagree with, and I'll see you next time. Peace.